Joining me now to discuss is David Katz, a former assistant U.S. attorney. Always good to see you, sir. Let's start with the White House saying it's not going to attend Wednesday's hearing. Doesn't that look bad, since not having representation in this process is exactly what the president has been complaining about?
Well, it does look bad. And, of course, what they've done is they've given Trump what he's asked for. And now he's suddenly not participating. But I think that he thinks that this will be largely scholarly. It'll be academic, and he doesn't really need to participate.
What do you think the White House strategy is? I mean, the whole thing seems to be at the moment to delegitimize the process. I mean, deflect by raising issues like Hunter Biden, but not deal with the substance of the allegations, the witness evidence, and just pretty much wait for a Senate trial where Republicans have the numbers.
Well, they not only have the numbers, but in the Senate, they'll control the procedures. As it is back here in the House, he doesn't have the control of what's going on. But having said that, they still expect that they're going to hear evidence in there. And so I think that he is going to pretty much stay out of it at this point. And, Mike, I think the rubber's going to hit the road when he says next week, you know, I want my lawyer to participate, but I'm going to keep stonewalling on the documents. And one of the key things that's going to come to the fore then is there are some sanctions. There are some rules against the president if he refuses to provide documents. He can't just send his lawyer in there and say, well, this is all hearsay, this is all not supported, when it's not supported by the fact that Trump and his agencies refuse to turn over documents. They're stonewalling. So that's when the rubber's going to hit the road. And as to the timing, you know, he's complaining that he's at the NATO conference. But what's happening with regard to the NATO conference is that, you know, we have an old saying, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. If you don't like the timing, don't commit the high crime and misdemeanor, because you may get called to account at a point when you say the timing is no good. And you know that Trump would say, no matter when the timing was, that the timing was inconvenient with his duties as the president.
And that the process is unfair. You know, Zoe Lofgren, a Democratic congresswoman, she's on the Judiciary Committee. And interestingly, she's the only member of Congress who worked on both the Clinton and Nixon impeachment. She even wrote one of the articles of impeachment for Nixon when she was a congressional staffer. And she was telling Dana Bash that this is more serious than Watergate. Have a listen to what she said.
President Nixon's misconduct related to trying to use the levers of government to hide the Watergate burglary, to, you know, his misconduct had to do with trying to throw the election. But at least it didn't involving other foreign nations. If you take a look at what the founding fathers were concerned about, it was the interference by foreign governments in our political system that was one of their gravest concerns.
It's interesting, in a purely legal sense, looking at then and now, how does the evidence heard so far stack up to the previous impeachments?
Well, the evidence is devastating. The Clinton one was considered kind of a farce. I mean, it was alleged perjury, but about a purely sexual matter. It certainly didn't seem to rise to the level of high crime and misdemeanor that warranted removal from office. Nixon's conduct was worse, and Trump's is even worse than that, because Nixon's, whatever you can say about it, you know, he called it a third-rate burglary, but it was a one-time crime that he then covered up. This was a repeated course of conduct. On July 25th, there's the call to incoming President Zelensky where the president said, but I need a favor, though. And then it's followed up the very next day with Sondland's visit and Sondland's phone call, which Mr. Holmes over in our embassy in Kiev testified to. He heard directly Trump's voice on the phone saying that he wanted this political personal favor. It's also become clear, Mike, that Trump and no one else stopped the money from flowing, even though it had been approved by Congress. Having said that, you know, both Nixon and Clinton did participate in the judiciary proceedings, and they did put on a defense. And I'm expecting that Trump, at the very least, will put in a written rebuttal. How much he participates beyond that is going to be whether he stops stonewalling. I think if he continues to stonewall, he's going to find that his privileges to participate are circumscribed by the fact that he's stonewalling the very group. This would happen to you in court if you stonewalled. You wouldn't be allowed to fully participate because you were stonewalling. You were obstructing the proceeding.
And it's interesting you mentioned Bill Clinton. This president's sexual conduct put his lawyer in jail. That's not part of this process at the moment in terms of impeachment. I wanted to ask you too. It's been interesting how we're talking strategy. There's been a lot of photo ops lately with Donald Trump. He was in having turkey with the troops. He was in Afghanistan. He was visiting factories. He's been honouring fallen service members. He's off to the NATO summit. He's largely stayed off Twitter, which is really interesting. His usual rants have not been there. Do you think this is a new approach? Because that is how Bill Clinton dealt with impeachment, stay out of the fray, be seen to be running the country. Do you think Donald Trump has been counselled to do the same?
I think he's being counseled to do that, but I think he finds it irresistible because I think what he likes most about the presidency, except maybe enriching himself, you know, the emoluments argument, is he loves the ego trip of it. He loves the attention. And I think that he just can't help himself, that he's that kind of egomaniacal. But certainly any criminal defense attorney like myself would counsel him, don't give them more rope to hang yourself. You know, think about it. If on July 25th, if he'd never made that call, he'd have been home free. I thought the Mueller report was devastating, but it kind of fizzled out when Mueller testified. And here, the very next day, Trump goes and gets himself right in trouble again with his big mouth and, of course, with his withholding the money, trying to get a personal favor to hurt what he considered his biggest political rival, Joe Biden.
It's going to be an interesting week or two ahead. Good to talk it over with you, David Katz. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you.